All right, everybody, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Greetings to all of you out there. This your one and only girl, Tiffany French, coming through live in effect. So today we're dealing with the Black history, which I do on a daily basis. So make sure you hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel, share the channel if you want to. Also share the video and all that great stuff. All right. So before I get started, I want to thank everybody who've been tuning in, watching my videos. Thank you so much. And thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel. That really means a lot to me. That's I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And I just want to thank you guys for that. That you guys have really been devoted and you have really shown a lot of support just by tuning in, and I appreciate it. I couldn't ask for more. So but today I want to get into the topic about Gabriel Prosser. So Gabriel Prosser was an enslaved he was an enslaved blacksmith. Right. For those of you that don't know what a blacksmith is, they the ones that make shoes and stuff. Okay. So he was an enslaved blacksmith, but he was also known to start a slave rebellion or slave revolts, which had failed during the 1800s. So the story of him is quite interesting. Now, I don't have a lot of information on him. So I only could find what I could, and I will be able to share that with you guys. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, that's Gabriel Prosser. That's Gabriel Prosser right there. That man sitting down. Sitting down looking like he chilling. Yeah, that's him. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so right here. All right, Gabriel Prosser. Gabriel, born 1776, and he died October the 10th of 1800. Today, commonly known as Gabriel Prosser, was a literate enslaved blacksmith who planned a large slave rebellion in the Richmond area in the summer of 1800. Information regarding to the revolt was leaked prior to its execution, and he and 25 followers were taken captive and hanged in punishment. In reaction, Virginia and other states' legislators passed restriction on free blacks, as well as prohibiting the education, assembly, and hiring out of slaves to restrict their chance to learn and to plan similar rebellions. In 2002, the city of Richmond passed a resolution in honor of Gabriel on the 202nd anniversary of the rebellion. In 2007, Governor Tim Kaine gave Gabriel and his followers an informal pardon in recognition that his cause, the end of slavery and the furtherance of equality for all people, has prevailed in the light of history. All right. So as you know, he's known for the slave rebellion that did not become successful because at the end, him and 25 other people ended up getting lynched or hung, rather. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. All right, so life and background. So he was born into slavery at Brookville, a tobacco plantation in Henrico County, Virginia. Gabriel had two brothers, Solomon and Martin. They all were held in bondage by slaveholder Thomas Posler, the owner of Brookfield. As Gabriel and Solomon were trained as blacksmiths, their father may have had that skill. Gabriel was also taught to read and write by the mid-1790s. As Gabriel neared the age of 20, he stood 6'2" or 3 inches high. His long and bony face was well made, was marred by the loss of his 2 front teeth and two or three scars on his head. White people as well as black people regard the literate young man as a fellow of great courage and intellect above his rank in life. All right. So we're going to go down to the Gabriel's rebellion. So Gabriel planned the revolt during the spring. Gabriel planned the revolt during the spring and summer of 1800. On August 30th, 1800, Gabriel intended to lead slaves into Richmond, but the rebellion was postponed because of rain. The slaves owners had suspicions of the uprising, and 2 slaves told their owner, Mosby Shepherd, about the plans. He warned Virginia Governor James Monroe, who called out the state militia. Gabriel escaped downriver to Norfolk, but he was spotted and betrayed there by another slave for the reward offered by the state. The slave did not receive the full reward. Gabriel was returned to Richmond for questioning, but he did not submit. Gabriel, his 2 brothers, and 23 slaves were hanged. So, as we know, the reason why Gabriel got caught or for his capture is because another slave started snitching on him. They snitched on him to one slave snitched on him to the master. Then the other slave started snitching just so he could earn a reward, but he didn't get all his reward. So basically, Gabriel got snitched on. And because he refused to submit and answer questions regarding to the rebellion, he was hung. But he was a revolutionary at heart. He was a warrior at heart, even though his own snitched on him. And that's very common today, because when you do something, you gotta be careful with those around you, because you got those who are gonna go back and tell on you. Now, some people do it because they're afraid and they don't want to get hurt, or they don't want to end up being a victim. Then there's those of them that do it because they can be spiteful and they want to get money and get a reward for it. All right, so let's go down to the histography. Alrighty. So the historian Douglas Egerton offered a new perspective on Gabriel in his book, Gabriel's Rebellion, the Virginia Slave Conspiracy of 1800 and 1802. He based this on an extensive primary research from surviving contemporary documents. Egerton found that Gabriel was a skilled blacksmith who was mostly hired out by his owner in Richmond foundries. Hired out was the way that slaveholders earned money from their slaves, who they needed less for labor, as they had reduced the cultivation of tobacco as a crop. The market for tobacco was depressed, but Virginia planters also had to deal with depleted soils because of the crop. Slaveholders leased skilled slaves for jobs available in Virginia industry. Egerton concluded that Gabriel would have been stimulated and challenged at the foundries by interacting with co-workers of European, African, and mixed descent. They hoped Thomas Jefferson's Republicans would liberate them from domination by the wealthy Federalist merchants of the city. In that environment, Gabriel also would have heard about the uprising and struggles of slaves in Saint Dominique. Egerton believed that Gabriel had 2 white co-conspirators, at least one who was identified as a French national. He found reports that documentary evidence of their identity or involvement was sent to Governor Monroe, but never produced in court, and suggests that it was to protect the Democratic Republican Party. The internal dynamics of Jefferson and Monroe's party in the 1800 election was were complex. A significant part of the Republican base were major planters, colleagues of Jefferson and Madison. Egerton believes that any sign that white radicals, and particularly Frenchmen, had supported Gabriel's plan could have cost Jefferson the presidential election of 1800. Slaveholders feared such violent excess as those related to the French Revolution after 1789 and the rebellion of slaves in Saint Domingue. Egerton believed that Gabriel planned to govern to take Governor Monroe hostage to negotiate an end to slavery. Then he planned to drink and dine with the merchants of the city. Egerton noted that Gabriel did not order his father to kill all whites except Methodists, Quakers, and Frenchmen. Rather, he instructed them not to kill any people in those three categories. During this period, Methodists and Quakers were active missionaries for manumission, and many slaves had been freed since the end of Revolution, in part due to their work. The French were considered allies as they had abolished slavery in their Caribbean colonies in 1794. Gabriel initially escaped on a ship owned by a former overseer. Egerton found that he was a recently converted Methodist who repeatedly overlooked information as to Gabriel's true identity. A slave hired out to work on the ship turned in Gabriel, seeking the reward so that he could purchase his own freedom. The state paid him only $50, not the $300 advertised. It says Gabriel Prosser's uprising was notable not because its result, the rebellion, was quelled before it could begin, but because of its potential for mass chaos and widespread violence. In Virginia, in 1800, 39.2% of the total population were slaves. They were concentrated on plantation in the tidewater areas and west of Richmond. No reliable numbers existed regarding slaves and free black conspirators. Most likely, the number of men actively involved number only several hundred. So now let's get down to this little area right here. From 1780 to 1810, the number of slaves free in the Upper South. Okay, in the Upper South will be like Virginia, Maryland, and West Virginia, DC, all that area that's considered as the Upper South. Okay. All right, so had grown markedly as some slaveholders were inspired to free slaves by American Revolution and its ideas. Methodists and Quakers especially worked to convince slaveholders to manumit slaves. The percentage of free blacks as part of the black population rose from less than 1% in 1782 to more than 10% by 1810. By that time, Virginia's free blacks numbered 30,466, or 7.2% of the total black population. By 1810, nearly 3/4 of Delaware's blacks were free. Some Virginia slaveholders were nervous about the sharp increase in the number of free blacks in the slave state. They were uneasy as well by the violent aftermath of the French Revolution and the uprising of the slaves in the 1790s in Saint Domingue. In 1792, France granted social equality to free people of color, and in 1793, French revolutionary commissioners in Saint Domingue granted freedom to all the slaves. Whites and free people of color, some of whom were also slaveholders. Whites and free people of color, some of whom were also slaveholders, immigrated as refugees to the U.S. during the years of upheaval, now known as the Haitian Revolution. They added to the population of free people of color in Charleston, Richmond, and New Orleans. Let's read that part again for you ADOS people out there. White and free people of color, some whom were also slaveholders, immigrated as refugees to the U.S. during the years of the upheaval, now known as the Haitian Revolution. They added to the population of free people of color in Charleston, Richmond, and New Orleans. In addition, slaveholders brought thousands of ethnic African slaves with them, especially adding to the African population of New Orleans. In 1804, the Black and Mulatto Revolutionary succeeded in gaining freedom, declaring the colony the independent Black nation of Haiti. Gabriel had been able to plan the rebellion because of relatively lax rules of movement for slaves between plantation and the city, as so many had been hired out and others traveled too from the city on errands for their masters. After the rebellion, many slaveholders greatly restricted the slaves' rights of travel when not working. Fear of a slave revolt regularly swept major slaveholding communities. All right. Then we're going to go down to here. Prior to the rebellion, Virginia law had allowed education of slaves to read and write and training of slaves in skilled trades. After the rebellion and after a second conspiracy was discovered in 1802 among enslaved boatmen along the Appomattox and Roanoke Rivers, the Virginia Assembly in 1808 banned hiring out slaves and required free blacks to leave the state within 12 months or face re-enslavement. And that was in 1806. Free blacks had to petition the legislature to stay in the state and were often aided in that goal by white friends or allies. In addition to the catalyst of Gabriel's rebellion, the law against residency was prompted by the marked increase in population of free people of color in Virginia, as noted above, in manumission of slaves after the American Revolution. The very existence of free blacks challenged the conditions of slave states. All right. So we're going to look at the legacy and honor. Gabriel's rebellion served as an important example of slaves taking action to gain freedom. All right. We talked about in Richmond, Virginia, how they adopted resolution to commemorate the 202nd anniversary of the execution of the patriot and freedom fighter. In 2006, Virginia State Conference of the NAACP requested Governor Tim Kaine pardon Gabriel in recognition of his contribution to the civil rights struggles of African American and all peoples. On August 30th, which that was on my birthday, 2007, Governor Kaine informally pardoned Gabriel and his co-conspirators. And Kaine said that Gabriel's motivation had been his devotion to the ideas of American Revolution. It was worth risking death to secure liberties. Kaine noted that Gabriel's cause, the end of slavery and the furtherance of equality of all people, had prevailed in the light of history, and added that it is important to acknowledge that history favorably regards Gabriel's cause while co-signing legions who sought to keep him and others in chains to be forgotten. The pardon was informal because it was posthumous. Now, they got representation in the media. So there was a book called Black Thunder, which was based on the story about Gabriel's life by Arna Bontemps. Okay. Okay, so I have to look into him. And in The Roots, the historical fiction, the rebellion is heard by the book's characters. In Sally Hem's Barbara Chase Revolt, 1979 novel about Heming's relationship with Thomas Jefferson. And he's mentioned in that book as well. So also Tim Berry, a songwriter for Richmond, wrote a song about him. Okay, and he's also mentioned in Public Enemy song. So, and many others. So if you want to look at more information, they go to footnotes right there at the bottom, the sources, further reading right down here at the bottom. So yep, that's all I have for right now. Yep, that's all I got. And let me see. Okay. Yeah, so that's all I have for right now. Let's see what else I can find for you guys. I found one source that relates to this topic, this article. So it talks about the enslaved rebellion in Virginia, but it does mention Gabriel Prosser. So let's go ahead. All right. So this article here is called Enslaved African Rebellion in Virginia by Joyce Tang, City University of New York, Queens College. All right. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the intro about this article, and then I'll just give you guys a source. So if you want to look into it, you can just type the name, the Enslaved African Rebellions in Virginia by Joyce Tang. It says, throughout the history of enslavement in colonial America, rebellions or conspiracies for revolt were not uncommon, particularly in the antebellum South, where there was a large concentration of Africans. In fact, well over 250 incidents of uprising and plights were recorded in the South. Many historians and legal scholars have attempted to answer the intriguing question of why enslaved Africans continue to revolt in general and in Virginia in particular, given that the odds against a successful revolt were so high. Because they wanted to be free, that's why they continued to revolt. The purpose of this article is to offer an assessment of African rebellions in Virginia, a hotbed of revolts throughout the history of American enslavement. As Morgan put it, if it is possible to understand the American paradox, the marriage of slavery and freedom, Virginia is surely the place to begin. The time frame for analysis stretches from the colonial period to the Civil War. Two of three widely publicized rebellions chronicled in American history took place in Virginia. At the turn of the 19th century, Gabriel, enslaved to Mr. Prosser, launched an unsuccessful rebellious attempt in Richmond. More than a quarter of a century later, excuse me, give me a second. Okay, more than a quarter of a century later, Nat Turner led a massive revolt in Southampton County. Several questions are central to my discussion. What were the factors in preventing a successful revolt by enslaved Africans in Virginia? What type of preventative measures were taken by the state and white plantation owners to reduce, if not entirely eliminate, the probability of outbreaks? What role did the law play in curtailing or promoting uprising? Were there any other contributing factors to the development of the Gabriel Prosser conspiracy and the Nat Turner insurrection? What changes were made in the legal system in response to a series of rebellious attacks? The following is a brief summary of the judicial checks adopted by the state of Virginia to prevent insurrections. First, enslaved Africans were prohibited to travel to any place without their master's permission. Second, they were prohibited from lifting their hands against any white Christians. Third, whites were guaranteed the absolute right to discipline their property, enslaved Africans. Fourth, enslaved and free Africans were not allowed to carry any arms. Fifth, association with others, whites and non-whites, was unlawful. Sixth, all Africans, regardless of their status, were not allowed to learn how to read and write. Seventh, enslaved Africans could not practice their own religion. Seventh, enslaved Africans could not practice their own religion. Think about that. Eight, once they were freed, Africans had to leave the colony within a specific period of time. And ninth, enslaved Africans were subject to forced relocation to Liberia after emancipation. Enslaved Africans were subject to forced relocation to Liberia after emancipation. This article demonstrates the critical role of law in creating, perpetuating, and upholding racial injustice in colonial America. Examining uprising of enslaved Africans in Virginia will provide answers to why the indigenous or ingenuous and complex legal system created by the white majority have been unable to curtail the rebellious activity orchestrated by a subordinated group. I will also argue that a number of factors had actually contributed to the outbreaks of revolts in Virginia, such factors as a changes in the plantation economy, B, a large concentration of enslaved Africans in the colony, C, the prevalence of anti-slavery and revolutionary philosophies had fostered the development of revolts. However, there were other measures against the rebellious activity by enslaved Africans. The number of uprisings in Virginia was significantly reduced after the introduction of a harsh penal system, military surveillance on enslaved and free Africans, and restrictive policies governing manumission and education of non-whites and the use of religion. All right, so I'm just going to stop right there. This comes from the Journals of Black Studies. It was written in May of 1997. All right. Again, that's the information on the enslaved Africans and the rebellions in Virginia. So it was a lot of restriction that was placed on them. And one of those restrictions that was really placed on the enslaved Africans were the freedom to practice religion. So because they were so rooted and so connected with their ancestral culture, right, and spirituality, to have somebody else to come in and take that away from you, that really deprives you of your right and deprives you of staying connected with your roots. So that's one, being connected spiritually and having your own culture and remembering your culture is a way to keep up the remembrance of your ancestors. It's part of the ancestor veneration, but because they could not venerate their ancestors, their ancestor was pretty much had to be forgotten out the picture. They had to adapt into the system of Western society, of Western philosophy. They adapt into that. Because why? Because they didn't want them, the white society, let's just call it what it is, they didn't want the Africans to go back to practice their traditional ways because they was worried or they were scared that they were going to get cursed and they was going to cast spells on them, or they were going to use that as a way to conjure spirits to be able to bring about uprising and things like that. They was afraid that Black folks was going to rebel and tear down this country. That's what they were afraid of. But anyways, so thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Okay, I'm about to go ahead and log off. And I will talk to you guys later because there's more that I want to talk about. There's another subject that I want to talk about. Speaking of Black, the state of Black people in America. That's going to be the topic. Be looking out for that. So hopefully I can do that later on because I want to talk about the state of Black women in America. Yes, I'm going to get on that subject because we got to get on that subject because there seems to be some controversy about Black women, about the concept of protecting Black women. It brings about controversy due to the fact that a rap artist by the name of Megan Thee Stallion, she did the little background video and had the slogan "Protect Black Women," and she made her little statement. Now it's a controversy. So we gotta talk about the state of Black women in America and how society look at the slogan "Protecting Black Women" as being controversial. Woo! Gotta love it. Oh boy, this is gonna be something interesting. I'm ready. So hopefully I can do it tonight. All right. But anyways, please take it easy on yourself. Be careful out here. And if you want to go share this video, you're more than welcome to do so. If you want to come on the platform, please let me know. Reach out to me and I'll be able to try to make it where you can be on the platform and we can be able to have a discussion on topics that's relevant and that's important. Just let me know what y'all want to do. But other than that, with that being said, this your girl Tiffany and I'm logging off. So peace. Until next time, take it easy on yourself. All right. Thank you. And you're welcome, Mr. Richard.